Welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. Alright, before we begin, in this video I will be going over a few things that I don't love about House of the Dragon. But let me just say first, I am really digging this show. Seriously, I cannot stress this enough. This show is so well made. I'm really digging the story and the characters, and of course, the dragons. Those dragons are glorious. And I gotta be honest, last night's episode, it made me feel things, man. All praise aside, House of the Dragon does have a few glaring issues, and the main one is the time jumps. There's a 16-year gap between episodes 5 and 8. All of these time jumps do come at the cost of character and story development, making the show feel a little bit discombobulated.
There's so much has happened since I last saw you.
So to clarify, this isn't a problem that ruins the show, not at all, but it's becoming a hindrance to the storytelling. And honestly, I'm getting the feeling that we are missing out on so much story. For example, the jarring, unresolved aftermath to Rhaenyra's wedding. Kristen Cole kills a man in front of countless witnesses, at a royal wedding no less. But then a decade later, he's still a member of the Kingsguard protecting the queen and training the princes. Since the show doesn't address it, we have no idea how he got away with the murder, thus leaving us clueless. And yeah, look, unfortunately, switching out the two main actresses mid-season, it's very jarring. So we got to address this issue, explain all the time jumps, and give our 2 cents on House of the Dragon could have handled the time jumps just a little bit better.
Oh, everybody's a critic these days.
Okay, so let's start by going over all the time jumps in the show up to now. The prologue of the first episode takes place in the year 101 AC, and the A stands for After the Conquest, meaning Aegon's conquest of Westeros. And then we get our first time jump picking up 9 years into Viserys' reign. The second time jump has a 6-month jump. And then we leap 3 years in episode 3 with Aegon Targaryen already celebrating his 2nd birthday.
They grew up so fast.
The time jump in episode 4 isn't specified, but apparently it's been about a year since Daemon killed the crab feeder. Episode 5 doesn't include a time skip, at least not a very long one. The show then jumps a whole decade in episode 6, and in the process replacing many of its actors. Our final time skip happens in episode 8. It's been about 6 years since episode 7. Just the perfect amount of time for Aemon to go from this...
Lip, look, even Lip's tougher than those guys.
...to this.
See if I can fix that lip of yours in.
Anyways, that's about 21 years worth of story in total. I mean, 30 if we count the prologue. And that's a huge span of time to cover in just 8 episodes.
What's the rush?
So, here's why the show is skipping around so much. House of the Dragon is based on a few chapters from George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, a book that covers the history of House Targaryen. The show focuses on a conflict known as the Dance of Dragons. That's the Targaryen Civil War.
The Dance of Dragons? Why is that a dance?
Now, there's a lot of ground to cover before the dance can begin, and the show's creators made the decision to speedrun through the major events that lead to the dance in season 1. And don't worry, we're not going to spoil anything in this video.
Rhaenyra Targaryen was...
Wait!
Now, there isn't anything wrong with time jumps as long as the story requires the time jumps, and especially if that means we're skipping all the boring parts. Though it does feel like we're missing out on some important plot and character developments. For example, at the end of The Rogue Prince, Viserys declares that he will marry Alicent, which leads to a major rift between Rhaenyra and her BFF. So if this was Game of Thrones, episode 3 would have been all about the aftermath of this. And you know what? We need to see the fallout, if only to understand why Rhaenyra is so mad at her best friend. Did she believe that Alicent somehow seduced her father, or that the marriage was her fault? We don't know. Instead, there's a 3-year time jump. So now it just feels like Rhaenyra was angry just because the show needed to create a rift between the queen and the princess.
Why? You're not even listening!
Don't kick stuff!
You're being a really bad friend!
You bad friend!
Ironically, there are deleted scenes that show confrontation between Rhaenyra and Alicent. We needed this scene. It's a crucial turning point in their relationship. They apparently even filmed the royal wedding. On top of that, there's Rhaenyra's anger with her dad. I mean, we get why she's so unhappy, and the 3rd episode explains it pretty well.
Because you mean to replace me with Alicent Hightower's son. You have no further use for me.
The problem is that this hurts Rhaenyra as a character. In the first 2 episodes, Rhaenyra was presented as a strong and intelligent young woman, but now she seems kind of salty and bitter, being angry at her dad for 3 whole years, never confronting him in all of that time. The bottom line, we needed another episode to fill in the gaps between episodes 2 and 3. In the show's defense, Rhaenyra acting this way isn't necessarily a bad thing. The people in House of the Dragon are extremely flawed and complicated. No one wants to see characters who always make the most logical decisions, and we don't need to be told every little bit of information. We can definitely fill in many gaps by ourselves as long as we use our brains. We don't consistently get bombarded with exposition, and overall the show does a solid job with visual storytelling. For example, the battle in the Stepstones. The episode begins with Daemon unleashing Caraxes on the Triarchy, but then we see exactly why the crab feeder has the upper hand in this conflict, even against 2 dragons. So we get why the siege is taking so long without anyone having to explain it outright. That is great visual storytelling. The end of the episode is another great example. We totally get what Daemon is thinking without needing him to say a single word, as he lays a trap of his own and defeats the crab feeder. All of this is done so well, chef's kiss, 5 stars, all that. That being said, the show omits way too much information, which at times makes us feel lost and detached from what's going on. This is something I felt about Criston Cole's actions in episode 5, so I mostly get why Criston went from Prince Charming to Sir Grudge. You could marry me.
5 minutes later.
Spoiled.
But what I'm missing is how did he get away with murder? Criston just lost it. He murdered Laenor Valerion's lover, at a royal wedding no less, witnessed by some of the most important lords and ladies in the 7 kingdoms. Hell, he even attacked the future prince consort. Yet somehow, after all that, he just walks off scot-free. Not only does he get to keep his job, but he gets a promotion, now being the personal bodyguard of the queen. Did Alicent call Saul Goodman or something to clear him from the murder?
Better call Saul!
I could see Daemon getting away with something like this because he actually already did get away with his wife's murder, but he's the king's brother. Now I assumed that Alicent pulled some strings so Criston wouldn't be punished, but we never really found out what happened there. Skipping a whole decade without addressing this removes any substance from the events of episode 5. If the show doesn't care to explain what happened, then why should we care? So this really bothered us here at ScreenCrush, so we decided to write our own aftermath of episode 5, showing exactly how he got away with it and what could have been a major turning point. We present to you the trial of Criston Cole. And just like weddings, trials in Westeros are always a source of some great stories. This trial would be a great opportunity to present Alicent's transformation. Now the show did a good job of explaining why Alicent did a complete 180 on Rhaenyra.
The realm will not accept her, and to secure her claim, she'll have to put your children to the sword.
During the trial, Alicent will do a full turn into Evil Queen. She could use Larys Strong to find some incriminating evidence against Laenor, threatening to expose him as being gay. To hide his secret, Laenor will change his story and allow Criston to walk away from any punishment. And remember, after the wedding, Viserys pretty much died. Well, I mean, look, he passed out, transforming into Gollum. Because of his condition, Viserys won't be able to take part in the trial. This will allow Alicent to be the judge and basically do a sham trial, just like Tywin Lannister did to Tyrion. What this trial will do is cement the conflict between Rhaenyra and Alicent, a complete shift in their dynamic. Rhaenyra will understand that her position in court is no longer assured. The friend Rhaenyra once knew is now her bitter enemy.
In all of King's Landing, is there no one to take my side?
The sound of your voice is beginning to anger me.
Also, this would show Criston's full transformation from an honorable knight to a
sanctimonious asshole.
This trial will plant the seeds for future conflict, show the lords and ladies of the 7 kingdoms that Rhaenyra's claim might not be as certain as some have thought. Her father's promise that she will be queen could be undone by Alicent, who's now accepted the full power of queen.
Power is power.
Now look, I get that they wanted to get to the time jump in episode 6, but we watch shows to immerse ourselves in their plot and characters. We want to experience the characters' stories, witness their highs and lows. We want to experience their lives and form an emotional bond with them. This is why we fell in love with Game of Thrones. It wasn't the shocking deaths or the big battles, it was the characters. Hell, long before all the spectacle, Game of Thrones was just about some really masterful dialogue.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
The show does a great job with characters like Rhaenyra, Daemon, Alicent, and Viserys, but with all the timeline gaps, it's like we're observing the story instead of experiencing it. But we're missing out on so much else because of this pace. For example, all the recastings. In order to tell this story that spans multiple decades, they had no choice but to recast a lot of roles. It's kind of strange. Some characters were dramatically aged up and recasted, while others looked the same as they did in the first episode. I mean, it kind of makes you feel bad for Paddy Considine. Everybody else gets to put on an outfit and a wig while he has to sit in the makeup chair for hours. Every episode getting closer to becoming this guy. The problem here is that many characters are portrayed by multiple actors, which unfortunately makes it harder to invest in their stories. Actors and characters are interwound in our minds. It's inevitable. So when we make a bond with a character, that bond extends to the actor. The show made it work, for the most part. The casting is on point and everyone is giving an excellent performance. Still, losing an actor feels like losing the character that they portrayed. For example, Laena Valerian. In one episode, she's a child, and then she's a teenager, and then she's a grown woman, and then she's dead. Laena seemed like a really cool character, but her development is superficial at best. She rides Vhagar, the biggest living dragon.
Do you know where Vhagar is now?
The Dragon Keepers believe she made home somewhere on the coast of the Narrow Sea.
Laena probably spent most of her life being mesmerized by Vhagar, eventually becoming her rider. Now this could have been a great story for her. Instead, Laena became Vhagar's rider off screen. This should have been a bigger deal. This dragon isn't just the oldest in the world, it's one of the 3 dragons who helped to conquer Westeros. It's also thematically significant as Laena's father, Corlys, is so obsessed with legacy.
History does not remember blood. It remembers names.
So it's fitting that his daughter will ride the essence of the legacy of Targaryen power. But again, there's simply no time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
And then Laena just dies. Sure, her death was sad, but her death simply doesn't hit us as emotionally as it should have. We barely even knew her. Just imagine if we had a full season to fall in love with this character, how much more powerful that moment would have been. And the same thing with Harwin Strong. The show barely explores the sudden romance between Rhaenyra and Harwin. I guess he punched a few people at her wedding and rescued her, and that was that. A true love story. They made 3 children together, so their relationship is very sincere. Harwin Strong seems like a really cool character. He's a good and loving father, but he must lie to his boys about their true parentage. The lie follows him everywhere, so he must struggle with the truth and with his feelings. Just as we got to meet Harwin Strong, he's snatched away. Just like with Laena, Harwin's death lacks that emotional gut punch.
They are all dead, sire.
And speaking of the Strongs, we have to talk about the new Littlefinger. I guess we can sort of understand why Larys is the way he is. He was born with a clubfoot, and in Westeros, that's probably as bad as being born a dwarf.
All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes.
So his father and brother probably weren't very kind to him, judging by the fact that he decides to burn them alive. But all of this is just guesswork. I think that we should have a better understanding of Larys' motivations other than just what's obvious. And knowing the wants and needs of characters is crucial for the audience to relate to them. This is why Daemon's arc feels way too all over the place. At first, he's the bad boy of King's Landing, and then he's obsessed with Rhaenyra as well as hurting his brother. He kills his wife in one episode, seemingly embracing his dark side, but in the next episode, he's married and has 2 daughters. But he's a changed man, empty of purpose, running away from what he once craved so much. It feels like Daemon does a 180 between every episode, making it kind of hard to understand what he actually wants at this point.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
So I have another gripe that might seem like nitpicking, but not to me. The world building around the dragons feels a little lacking. Yes, I know that the CGI for those dragons don't come cheap, but I can't help but think that the dragons are too much in the background right now. The dragon should be the focus of this culture. I mean, these are fire-breathing creatures in this world. There should be more focus on the relationship between the dragons and their riders. The rules about the dragons should be clear, like who rides what dragon, why some characters get to ride old dragons, and while others bond with dragons from birth. And therein lies the problem with this show's pace. The creators decided to cover a huge span of time in just 1 season. Now, book readers know what's coming next, so I'm sure they won't mind the show speeding toward the Dance of Dragons. But for the fans who are unaware of the source material, this plot can be way too jarring. Perhaps it wouldn't be a terrible idea to wait to the time jump until season 2. That way, the plot could have been developed more naturally, without so many huge gaps in the timeline. Not to mention that Fire and Blood is written like a history book told from an unreliable narrator's perspective. So I'm sure that the creative team behind the show could have found ways to expand on stories, especially with George R.R. Martin involved. But that's the thing with adaptations, they don't always have to follow the source material to a T. Just look at some of the creative liberties that Game of Thrones took in its early seasons, like all the scenes with Arya and Tywin.
My mother served Lady Dustin for many years, my lord. She taught me how to speak properly.
You're too smart for your own good.
That being said, House of the Dragon is meant to be a generational story spanning multiple decades where children inherit their parents' war. So maybe stretching things too much would have created other problems. It's like doing a story about a group that goes out on an adventure to face a dragon in the first film, and they only confront said dragon in the second one. And then there's the third snooze fest of a movie. Wait, didn't they actually make a trilogy just like that? Truth be told, House of the Dragon isn't Game of Thrones, which was a story that focused on one generation. The show doesn't need to go on for 8 seasons. I love the idea of House of the Dragon being a strong 3 or 4 season story that doesn't overstay its welcome. A good compromise would have been some flashbacks.
I feel a flashback coming on. Yeah, I was right.
The show could keep its breakneck pace, but within those episodes, there would be flashbacks that would fill in the gaps, fleshing out certain stories and characters much better. And that will also be a great way to keep Millie Alcock and Emily Carey around for much longer. Alright, so I've been going on and on about all the problems in House of the Dragon, but despite all that, the show is really good, even with its flaws. And hey, as problematic as the time gaps are, at least the show isn't boring. Major developments happen in every episode. And House of the Dragons did something incredible. It made us care about these new characters in a very short span of time, even with its pacing, and that is a very impressive achievement. I just wish that we could have spent more time with those characters. So now it's your turn. What do you think about the time jumps in House of the Dragon? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash the bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.